Yikes! Back here with my 10 loyal listeners. What do you know? People who went beyond the South Park video, or perhaps even listened to me on a podcast when they're good recorded. I'm showing these because I know say there's bare people who jump in front of a camera and you're just there looking at their face and you're thinking, you know what, I could have just ripped and extracted the audio, so this is the justification for enjoying the whole thing. Yeah, you got some books with blurbs. And I actually just wanted to say, I really like this book because for me, it is really pleasing on the eye, pretty. You know the purported Emory Douglas quote claim about the job of the revolutionary is to make the revolution sexy? Well, this book is sexy. I mean, look at the colors, look at the spacing, the pictures, the imagery, the text size. Look, the actual font itself, how they break down the actual chapters, the sub-chapters. Footnotes at the end, I'm not really keen on the ones where they put the references and bibliography right at the end. I like them after chapters. I don't really like them at the bottom as well. I think it's a bit awkward. And it's just really pleasing on the eye. Now, what made me purchase this book is because I came across an essay when I was cleaning up the other day. There's a collection of notes that one of the youth workers gave me, I think in 2007 or 9, and I just found it when I was going through a box. And this was one of the texts that got quoted there about language and how language is a prison that keeps black folk out. So a lot of stuff has really just been triggering that. And I think this is published in 1986. I do believe Chinweezy was published the year after. So if we check here, this was published in East Africa. Wow. And it actually says, yes, first published 1986. This reprint is, I believe, from 2005. But I'm really keen on this. Really keen on this. The other text, I prefer the green cover with the lady. Well, I'm fine with this. It's decent enough. Although that looks like some Predator thing gone wrong or Coolio, I'm not really sure. Apart from that, font's alright. Joanzu Kondrufa does the intro. Can't recall where I purchased this, but I say it's not as pretty or appealing as Nagugi, but this one is decent, I think, anyway. One of the quotes that really came is this idea of how we miss the mark. So I'm gonna try to use some text or just show some pictures just to make this a little bit more appealing. Now I'm quoting here the earliest part where he says, "When you control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his actions. You do not have to tell him not to stand here or go yonder. He will find his proper place and will stay in it. You do not need to send him to the back door. He will go there without being told. In fact, if there is no back door, he will cut one for his special benefit. His education makes it necessary." I actually put the word there in, so that's a mistake. It doesn't say there if we're going to be speaking verbatim. Also, I saw the word education and it kind of sickened me. Like, he used the word miseducation elsewhere, so I think we should just call it miseducation or indoctrination or training or propagandization or even whitewashing or even domestication. I really am keen on that term, or disciplining, as it were. His structuring, formatting even, but these are some terms because when we say education, it's a bit confusing, as we might put it. Also, the key thing as well that came out of this, because there's just no intro, there's not even any really structure to this, is there? So in page 1, that's not what I'm looking for, but on page 3, it's one of my favourite parts. Especially given these current witch hunts. I mean, rape allegations. My bad. I regret that. As a matter of fact, now that I regret that, could I say I was forced? Anyway, it says on page 3, "It is strange then that the friends of truth and the promoters of freedom have not risen up against the present propaganda in the schools and crushed it. This crusade is much more important than the anti-lynching movement because there will be no lynching if it did not start in the schoolroom. And there we have another idea. We talk about education. I think it would even be as accurate to say schooled. Where were you schooled? But when we say education, for me, that's something that's almost self-directed. I know we talk about being autodidacts or autonomous technology, but it's something which is exploratory, authentic, or the word I was looking for is organic. So this manufacturing of people, this mass indoctrination, this homogenization of their force so that they become this thoughtless multitude, I'm reluctant to call it education. That's really, really questionable for myself. But I like this idea about lynching because it brings me back to what John Taylor Gatto used to say about in the 60s, how television is the school teacher. Or better yet, television is schooling you. Because when we see this, we think about school. Oh, school, okay. 0 to 16 or 3, I don't know when it even starts. But we think about, oh, school's what ends at 16. Then it's college, then it's university here in England. Or postgraduate, doctorate, doctor, professor. Blah, blah, blah. Probably don't want to see my crotch. I'm a man spreading. Oh my god, that is so evil. I'm so bad. Is that better? Is no one triggered now? Is this shape? Oh, four. Is that insulting anyone? I don't know. Just tell me what you want to work with. Anyway, I don't want to be sending subliminals and stressing people. I know there's a lot of fragile people out there. Some people might even campaign because they see this as a very offensive gesture. You never know. To continue, this idea about schooling, as it were, being television and how we are programmed and indoctrinated daily by these messages. And I remember that book, I think it's called Hair Story, where very early on she says, or one of the contributors says, that females learn how to carry their hair from a sideways glance or overheard comment or remark or some other gesture. And it made me think that's again you being trained, you being conditioned, you being programmed, you being domesticated, disciplined along certain lines, but there's no box, as it were, or four cornerism. I think four wallism, nearly full. I think that's what he calls it. So when we think about school, this is a fragmentation. I mean, John Taylor Gatto talks about the fragmentation in itself, where he has subjects and topics, as opposed to someone who sees the wholeness and someone who thinks in terms of fullness and variety. So we become very partial, fragmented thinkers. So it's a bit more than that. I'm just going to adjust myself now. To that for my yoga structure. So even when we think now, the fragmentation that occurs within this box, but the fragmentation even extends outside of it. So once you leave this box, you're still fragmented because you associate being schooled or learning or thinking with that classroom as opposed to thinking, as I think William Cooper said, this whole world is an open air mind control experiment. Or Kamala Kambon, although I'm reluctant to use the term, he says they extended the parameters of borders of the plantation and made it a global plantation. I think plantation is a bit like, hey, cotton, hey, tobacco, as opposed to Negro. So I prefer, killing fields is already being copyrighted, And then some people like to talk about torture chambers as those floating prisons. I don't even want to say torture camps. I'll just say the torture fields. That's really what it was. I mean, Gus T. Renegade talks about systematic rape, castration, mutilation, torture. So I think I'm much more comfortable calling them the torture fields than plantation. Happy family. Like, hey, come back. Where you running away to? Spank, spank, naughty, naughty. That's what I kind of think about in plantation. Happy family. Some even say plantocracy, but no, I like torture fields because I know, victim of war, subjugation, captivity, prisoner. Okay, righty. As opposed to, would you like some tea and sugar and biscuits and cookies? Then that. So again, I'm just trying to emphasize how important it is to use proper language and words. And that brings me to this. Money issues in, they're just baiting up my personal business. We'll do these letters and them things there. Well, money issues in black male-female relationships. One of my favourite authors, actually, And I often wonder, you know, when people say, because even with dance, you walk through someone's class and like, oh, I trained that person. Like, no, I just had spare time and decided to take this class. Don't try to claim me. I made you who you are. I was your mentor. I am your father. All of that stuff. So I do wonder about what qualifies as someone influencing your thinking or inspiring you and the like. So that comes into mind quite a lot. I'll say I've definitely geared a lot of my thoughts around his ideas. George Sabor, I think, has impacted me in some way. There's many. I mean, Amos Wilson, I think I've rinsed him to the fullest. Like, you know, when they say you can't be happy with one person, I always say I'll be happy with Amos. Like me, and that was monogamy 101. Malcolm got rinsed to like the negroidus nth degree fully. So Malcolm Wilson, I think of everything that's out there on him. I've listened to everything he has to say. I've read all of his books as well. Chinwuzu, I would say also, I've done Anatomy of Female Power, a couple of his essays. I've listened to his talks, about two of them, his infamous one on the cows, Context of White Supremacy. And what else? I've got the rest and the rest of us, but I haven't really engaged it like that. I've only really delved into decolonizing the African mind, although I do have the one he wrote on decolonizing literature, but I think that's a joint effort, or, you know, more wide-reaching projects with other people participating. Noguchi might even have contributed to that. So that's the question. What means people have really affected you? I think this is one of them, isn't it? This one here is definitely one of them. And why this text is something I always defer to or go back is because it really gets to the core of the masculinist perspective, which is, I think, deeply neglected. And even me, I've been invited to participate in a forum next week. And, you know, they're going to say, what is black love? What is education? What is the future? And so, trying to preempt what's going to get discussed, I looked at two forums, because this black chat thing is it's being used, let's say that. So they're both discussing black love. You know what I noticed? 2.5 hours, no one defined it. It just becomes this wishy-washy, take some of that, take some of that. But like, give me definition. I like to work with definitions. Like, you know that whole mystery thing of, you're gonna come link me, what are we gonna do? Something. Like, you're gonna come link me, what are you gonna do? Blow your back out. I like that type of thing still, instead of the, will he, won't he? Ooh, find out next week on, will I make a big claim? That's my type of thing. Anyway, to continue. So I was trying to get a definition for black love, and nothing was out there. And I know it's really white. It's low-key irritating as Amos Wilson has covered this. The Francis Rogers Burroughs, I think that's the name, not Rogers, whatever, I can't pronounce nothing, can I? Me and Spill English just don't get along. Ernie Smith, help me. And I think Chris Wilson did Black Love, so it's been covered. Bobby Hemmett did something on it, it's been covered. But I think we really like to just touch on these stuff because, and this is the crux of why I'm even chatting to them, because like, we just want to speak for the sake of it. We don't really want to get to the crux of things. We kind of just like the drama and controversy. Even on Snapchat, I was just there hyping out, chatting, bare breeze, bare was as it were, bare gassing, saying, oh, black woman could never. And I put out these most grotesque females, dead things, the deadest things ever. And just captioning them like, black woman, you wish, you must be jealous. White woman, run this thing. You know, people's there popping up to me. Of course, we get some people like you jump up. And then some like, you can't be serious. And then some there smileys. And others are like, how could you say this? I was like, do you hate black women? You're black yourself. What colour are you? Show me a picture. Why do you hate everybody? You're stupid. Blah, blah, blah. Them times I'm like, why are you even... Forget that joke angle. It's like, why are you even responding to this? And that was the part that troubled me, because if I'm saying this and you're responding to this, it must really bother you. And if it really bothers you, what it's telling me is you really believe this. You believe there's some, not even just non-black, there's some white women who are just superior, who are competing and stealing your men. And so when a black man almost gives up himself to be with them, you feel betrayed. And that's what it was. Like, they genuinely think that these white women in general are just like better than them or superior, as it were. So if you post anything, it's like, why are you putting on black women? Do you hate us? Which brings up its own complication in itself, because it's that two-tone perception thing. It's when someone says, you must have been hurt. You want to go, no, I wasn't, no, I wasn't. Then why are you saying, I don't know? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm of that thing of, if you're playing truth or dare, say yes to the first 10 things. Go on, get in there. Just agree with them. Say, has anyone ever like just took a crap in your mouth? I say, oh, standard thing. If a girl don't dump it in my mouth, I'm not dealing with it. That's agree. And take it from me. Life hack. Truth or dare, first 10 things, just agree with them. And don't just agree like agree with them. Agree with them with that energy. Like, you know when Ade Bayo scored against Arsenal? Agree with them with that type of energy. So when people make these claims against me online, I just say, yeah. Even one of them was like, do you hate black women? I just said, yeah, because I've got 2.5 inches, and anytime I've tried to be with a black woman, they've always laughed at me. They've never accepted me, so I've never been with a black woman ever, and only white women have taken me in. I'll just go along with it. And why it is because even in theatre, that thing about being unprotected, or the phrase I think is really beautiful, the unguarded space, that embracing that vulnerability. I found vulnerability in females so sexy, like fully, like I could be a dead thing who's just vulnerable, and that's the one. Forget the Apple Watch, that's just here, there, everywhere. Be a not dead thing, of course, like nah, but a basic thing, or just like but if she's very vulnerable, it's just like even thinking about it, it's just like time. Where did that come from? I don't know. To continue. So I'm being in that unguarded space where people just chat, and it's like, yeah, okay, I agree. What it is I think that frees you, releases you to do a bit more, to really explore more possibilities. So when someone says, do you hate people? Say yeah. And now, instead of all that tension you put into trying to guard and everything and defend who you are, it's like, yeah, let me develop that idea. Let me go with that thought. Let me take it somewhere. And that permits you to really see things like, if I did hate someone, what would that mean anyway? And that's the thing, you know, when Lenny Bruce and the N-word, but the suppression gives it power. Well, that thing about hate, I don't hate. Yeah, say, yeah, I hate. And then really, really sit with that with yourself. So when people say that, it's like, okay, I hate. Now what? Are you saying I'm a defective person? If I do hate, what brought me to this stage? Are you calling me sick? Is that what you're really saying with this word, I hate? And if I do hate, who programmed me? Who made me like this? You see, their words, it don't really go anywhere. Because wherever you say no or yes, there's nothing out of it. It's just their thing of trying to control you through their language. That's another form of psychic attack, which is a bit more, I guess, pernicious. It's a bit more nasty because it's like that very covert, malign manipulation. That's what it is. So let's agree with them. Even when someone says, have you been hurt? You can either say, oh, who hasn't been hurt? Or say, what difference does it make? Or better yet, just ask them, how does that impact upon the veracity of my statement? Just ask them, does that change the nature of what I'm saying? Even when people get online and ask me what colour I am, I'll just say I'm mixed race. Because if you can't assess my statements based on like the random voice in the air, it's like, questions. That's that thing I'm trying to talk about, being unguarded, and when people attack you, to not really need to defend yourself, which is ironic as well. Because even I went to the Senate earlier today, and I was sitting in a room, and these guards come up to me and say, hey, what you doing in there? What you doing in there? I just ignore them. What you doing in there? Hey! I just ignore them. They fully come right up in my grill, like I'm George Foreman. And they're like to me, hey, we're speaking to you. I said, shut your mouth, Reg, and I'll thump you in your face. Don't ever shout at me. I fully said that. I said, I'm licking them out. So we had that look back and forth. And then I went and sat down. And why it was is because I know everyone says that, oh, turn the other cheek, just be it. That's not me. I wish it would. Nah, that's not me. Well, I went and sat down afterwards, and I'm like, this is your policy. You've come to me. You know the usual of black male is never just there. They're always doing something like, I don't know, trying to plot or scheme, or I'm doing some Mark Clark stuff, like trying to see where I would bomb first, you know, if there's a terrorist attack, this will be our base or station. So a black male can never be doing. You can never either just be. There's always something you are doing. You're the subversive element, the fifth column, as they say. And so your being is doing, is what I'm trying to say. It's always seen as antagonistic, as hostile, because Negroes are supposed to be in jails, or in slums, or blocks, or graveyards, or mental hospitals. So when they're just existing in space, without someone supervising them, someone guarding them, someone watching over them, someone subjecting them to some type of surveillance, that's seen as pathology. So they had to interfere or inconvenience or do something to disturb my peace, or some type of imposition had to be placed upon me. Some type of sabotage, because I sabotage their sense of peace by existing as a black male. So they need to engage in their counter warfare, because they see my very existence being outside of a context of being subjugated is seen as war to them. So in other words, if I'm not dead, I'm a threat to people. That's how blackness features in the mainstream mind, in the white mind, in the white supremacist thought construct, in this very violent epistemic frame in which we operate in. And so it's really irritating, because like, I cannot just be in that space. That's why I just ignore them. And it really made me think of everything, because these are the same people probably on that Black Lives Matter, because it was two Negroids, of course. Black Lives Matter. And now they're so stuck in that cognitive dissonance, or they're so oblivious to reality, that they neglect all of that rhetoric, and then they continue the same violent approach or antagonistic aggressiveness as the proverbial police or the race soldiers would a George Floyd. But they can't see the contradiction. Seriously? Seriously? They can't see the contradiction at work, the conflict, the incongruence, as it were, where it's incoherent. You know, I can't say duplicity as such. They don't really apply it in these situations or within that, I guess, event. It weren't quite placed there, but there was definitely a break between reality of what's going on and what we profess to believe in. And they did it to another girl as well, not the same people. And an East African brother was like, some guy, hey, what are you doing there? What are you doing here? And she like, don't chat to me like that. And she grabbed her, she headbutted, she knew that didn't happen. And I liked if it did, because that had some footage. I went viral with it at one time. And it just made me think, this is your policy towards people who walk into it, to see us as enemy combatants. Hostility, warfare, aggression, provocation, insult. But you can't even recognize, you can't compare this to the whole policing situation. It's the thing about policing black bodies. Bottom line, policing black bodies. Why are you not supervised? What are you doing here? And it also made me realise about the apartheid regime of checkpoints. This is black life. This is why we have racial battle fatigue. This is why we get this complex post-traumatic syndrome. This is why we get these, I think they call it epigenetics or some good of the sort. This is why we get Tom Henryism, the burnout, the exhaustion, the breakdown, the volatility, the vulnerability, the fragility, the ultimate victimization. But we don't want to be victims. I'm proud of who I am. But this is daily what we're subjected to. Being in this prison, these are the guards. They weren't wearing no police uniforms as such, or you know, the Masonic pawns on their heads with the black and white squares and the queen thing, any of that. And they go on horses. Isn't that funny? There's nothing about knights. Maybe the dungeons, that's where they used to place us, isn't it? Or something of the sort. To continue. But whiteness manifests through these black bodies. And yet the irony is, we always say this thing about, oh, don't let white people come to the space, but it's ridiculous because we think through white terms. We use white constructs, their language, their naming tools, their mechanisms, their labeling procedures. Yet we sit down and say, we don't want white people here. I used to joke about black relationships or black love. Like, what black even exists? At least with the African thing, we get into the metaphysics, or that sense of being, belonging, beyond this set frame of materialist mechanism as such. But this whole thing about black love is ridiculous because we bring whiteness. There's rarely a space where blackness is that whiteness isn't. Or as I say, hey, where does our oppression end and our self begin? These are questions we don't really interrogate. And as we say, just as it's possible for black thinking or black perspective to operate without a black person present, it's very much a reality that whiteness is an operation without white people there. It's how we're structured. Even this whole, I guess, paradigm or spectrum of conversation about light skin, dark skin, once you jump onto that agenda, once you enter into that frame, you're done for. You're done for because you're still primarily defining yourself in relation to whiteness. There's no light skin, you're just black to me. Or to be specific, you are non-white. But when you start entering into these almost ridiculous exchanges, these trivialities, scruples, as it were, bickering battles, it shows that whiteness is still in that guarded, protected space of being invisible, uncontested, whilst everything in that zone of non-being has this conflict, hostility, warfare, clashing, friction, tension. That's what it's meant to be. So that really came to my thinking as well. So when we speak about black love, black relationships, I'm like, where does your selfhood begin? In order for you to have that discussion, where do you begin? It's like when you talk about blacks are killing themselves. I've said this for years. How can I kill myself if I'm not myself? Drum roll, please. Just basic stuff. It just ain't making sense, like at all. And we don't sit down and think about this. And I think this comes to another thing about Neil Postman, who was coming to my mind, because remember Johan is credited that thing about none are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they're free. And I was reading some George Orwell on the politics of English language about how there's empty words, and fascism basically is anything bad. And the whole, even Carter Woodson says it in one of these pages about we've been taught. I don't think I'll find it actually. No, it's can't. I tried that slip thing, some Johnny Five or some meat or man where I just land on the page and didn't quite get there, did it? But he even says himself, when someone agrees with us, we're all good. But the second they disagree with us, conflict. And I'm saying that's how we've been programmed largely. Because we are unable, we've been unequipped, there's no resources to deal with people that disagree with us. Even a forum I was in the other day, someone was saying, oh, you're so full of yourself. And that is our brain trashing through language, because that's what their language necessitates, this almost logic of death and anti-thought. Well, someone who doesn't agree with them is full of themselves. But if you really sit down and break down what this person said, they were full of themselves. Well, because someone came with a counter argument, because someone did not agree with them, did not echo chamber, did not confer, did not corroborate the foolishness, the fantasy fairy tale fiction, the constructive arguments they were putting forward in this group chat, then they were full of themselves. Forget the fact that I'm bringing literature, bringing arguments, bringing logic, bringing perspectives, bringing myself forward when my hamstrings can't reach. Forget that. It was just because you're not letting me be full of yourself, you are full of yourself. And this is what language does to us. It puts us at war with ourselves. That's why I think Neil Postman really got this. I think Jeff Schmidt in his book Disciplined Minds was looking at another aspect of that. Charles Eisenstein in Ascent of Man does a little bit. I think it's in the text Forgiven, feminist critique of thought. Sandman, rescue me. But I think that idea comes up as well. I think it's touched upon in that essay by Jandy Matthews towards the destruction of schooling, where they quote, I think it's Jay Amwood, who themselves look at that in the book, Reinventing Anarchy Again. Well, things about language and how we become imprisoned in language. And Neil Postman was talking, that's why I had to grab this book or purchase it. And I'm also doing money laundering, so what better way to hide money than in books? Delete that. Apparently talks about language, or English language in particular, being a prison that keeps us out of it, but also it keeps people protected. Because it's almost, that might be a contradiction, but think about the layers. A castle, where there's people who are on top, who are holding a fort, and then they've got people captive. I have both inside, who are subjugated, and outside, who are they're warring against. And that's what warfare is. There's the line of people who, of conquest, because there's war is the conquest. and there's war, which is the actual conflict, conquest conflict. So some people, of course, have already been subjugated, and other people are still being subjected to the open hostility, and they're like, I really want to go over there and see how long I've been chatting my car. They come and say it's been a hot sec, and I don't even want to play some music. I really don't know how long I've been chatting. I'm thinking that I'm going to close this off anyway, as I try to keep these down to half an hour, and I really don't know how long I've been speaking for. And I'm not the guy who's going to really go back and put this on the laptop to edit the thing. That's a bit long, and that's why I chat my thing. So I'm going to go over, and I might, this may be the last time you see me, people.